Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Drupal 8 critical issues discussion for the last day of July, July 31st, 2015. And we have Alex, Bob, Daniel, Wiener, Jibrin, Catch, Wim Lears, and Gabor Hoichi on the call. And in the order I see people, Alex is the first. So take it away, Alex.
Always the first when you host the meetings. Okay, so I've been mainly working on update path criticals for the past couple of weeks. Before we got the recent beta 13 out, we got the new documentation in about how config is supposed to be used during a hook update and implementation. And since then, I've been working on how we are going to deal with entity updates during hook update N. And currently in head we have like the auto entity updater, but that only works when there's no data change. And if there's a data change, it currently makes it look like it worked, but it doesn't do anything. And so trying to discuss how we're going to fix that and what we should do. And it's proving gnarly, to say the least. That's me.
Okay, we'll discuss that later then. Daniel?
Sure. Good morning. Yeah, I was mostly working on ensuring that all kind of menu links don't open up security issues. And yeah, beside from that, we got the block upgrade path for context IDs and yeah, in general work and review and discussion on some issues.
Yeah, definitely yay for the block upgrade path. Yay. Okay, Jibrin?
Yeah, so not directly working on criticals, but I have been involved with a lot of issues which are dealing with the upgrade path, and I was trying to write as many as tests as possible for the upgrade path so that we can address if there are any issues. So that's it from me.
Okay.
Yes, so yeah, the block context upgrade path issue finally managed to commit that and get the beta out this week. Although there's a regression in the page cache and about whether to put out like a paper bag release or not. Still not sure whether we will or not. And then been discussing the entity updates this morning a bit yesterday and trying to get my head around exactly what the implications of that is. So we should talk about that later on the call. That's it for me at the moment.
Okay, and the Q page. Wim?
Yep. So I have not actually been working a whole lot on criticals, been supporting some of them. But I have been focusing on Smart Cache related stuff instead because Smart Cache and BigPipe are the biggest potential performance boosts that we're still going to get out of Drupal 8. And they're about using a lot of the things we already have in 8. So doing those will hopefully allow us to close the two performance criticals that we still have open. So indirectly, I am working on them. And for me, what I have been doing is Smart Cache is green as of a few days ago because the last blocker got committed. A lot of great reviews have been posted already, and it's been getting better and cleaner. It now works for every cacheable response, so any response implementing cacheable response interface. So basically, any kind of response that has cacheability metadata. So it's not limited to HTML anymore. So that's going to be interesting in the future with more and more people starting to use REST or headless Drupal sites that are using alternatives to REST, like GraphQL. Those kinds of responses will be interestingly cacheable as well. And so Smart Cache is in a good place, but right now, and that's something I'm not sure everybody realizes, Smart Cache is not actually going to cache a whole lot of pages, HTML responses in Drupal 8, because every single HTML response includes, for example, the breadcrumbs block. And the breadcrumbs block, we haven't done the work yet to make that cacheable. Same goes for example, the local actions. Those kinds of things still make every page uncacheable because they specify maxh0.bubbles, and therefore Smart Cache, being very simple and very dumb, it just respects that because it sees, oh, maxh0, I am not supposed to cache this, so I don't. And so therefore, effectively, it is not going to yield a big effect. And therefore, what is necessary is auto placeholdering. And I just posted a comment like 1 minute before we started, right there. So that's on the auto placeholdering issue. I turned it into a meta, into a plan, and I created several child issues, which I will populate with patches, because I've been working on a bunch of patches so that I have a coherent step-by-step approach to get auto placeholdering in, the simplest possible thing first, and then the more advanced things. And that then will, if we get it in, of course, auto placeholdering will make Smart Cache all the more effective and will help both Smart Cache and BigPipe in the long run. And so auto placeholdering is what I've been doing, and that is effectively done now and is going to go to review stage. And that's it for me.
Okay, so I worked on mostly things that have already been mentioned. Tried to work on supporting issues as much as possible. So I helped people working on the config cache tags issue, the local text and contextual links security issues, the menu item security issue, the MySQL index issue, and I don't know what else. So just trying to help with reviews, change records, issue summary updates, all of those things that help go things smooth, so that we can make progress. And on the side, I work with the DA on the localized Drupal.org 7 update, which is still listed as a Drupal 8 release blocker, although that was discussed again multiple times last 2 weeks, in fact. So that's coming along, but it still needs some work. Yeah, so that's it for me. And in the meantime, Andre arrived. So, Andre, you want to go next?
So this week I worked with Chicks on that observe patch, which is basically it's very similar to the merge query in the DBPNG, but it's optimized for multiple row inserts and for tables with just one unique index. So that should fix the issue with deadlocks on state tables. Chicks posted a patch which works for MySQL, as far as he told me, and now I have to finish it and post an implementation for SQLite and Postgres. And yeah, that's mostly what I've been doing this week.
Okay, and Francesco will be in time as well.
Hey, so sorry. Basically, I was on vacation last week, so not much to report. Actually, yesterday 2 criticals in the entity system queue were opened, and I started to look into them. One should be almost ready because we have a working patch. We just need to fix a couple of details, but it should be fixable easily. And the other one is a nasty one. I discussed it with Alex and Catch. Basically, the idea is that we are proposing to remove automated entity updates from update.php because it makes it way too unpredictable to determine which is the update flow, basically. And yes, actually, I discussed it a bit with Berder yesterday night, and we didn't reach a final consensus. Actually, he didn't say no, but he said he wanted to move on it a bit more before providing an answer. So I think we should at least wait for his feedback before going on with the implementation. That's why actually I promised I would post a patch yesterday night, but that's why I just posted one comment summing up my view on the problem. And that's all for me.
Okay, so I guess that was the round. And I'm looking at IRC. Seems like Birdie arrived to IRC, but he's not responding. So I was assuming that if we can get him on the call as well, that would be even better for discussing automatic entity updates. But if he's not going to come, then that sounds like the one that more than one person brought up. So we should discuss that, I think.
I definitely think we should discuss that issue, but maybe give like Sasha 5 minutes to turn up, because it would be even more productive if Sasha was here.
Yeah, I agree. So anything else we want to discuss before that?
Well, I think we should say, yay, we were down to less than 10 criticals for a while. We reached 9, but now we're back up to 11, unfortunately. But that means we're I think like the nature of the bugs we're finding, they're largely centered around upgrade path and tricky issues, but they're bugs rather than big tasks, big things that we've forgotten to do. So hopefully it should mean that resolving them might just involve a lot of discussion, but they feel resolvable, not endless. So I think we're in a good place. Like, I think we'll probably be at 10 criticals at least by the end of the day, maybe less, because we've got at least one that's RDBC, and as Patch said, like the other entity translation issue is close. Is there anything else to discuss that's tricky? We haven't got anything.
So we could talk about, decide whether we need a hook upgrade and upgrade PHP, which is the following URL.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should talk about that as well.
So the general problem is that in order to run update PHP, you need some form of working Drupal. So by default, if you require logged in users for update PHP, you need the router table, the user table, the session table, all kind of cache tables, the cache text table, the config table, which is quite a lot of stuff you require and you cannot change anymore, because once you would want to change them, you couldn't do that anymore, because you have this dependency of update PHP needed to be executed in order to run the code, which assumes the new structure of the table, for example. So the question is, like, how? So first, can we really lock them down? And in case we can't, to which part can we bootstrap without breaking anything? So one question, for example, Alex asked, so we looked at the tables which get executed. I put update free access into settings PHP. He tried to log in before. So, for example, the question is whether such a dedicated front controller would be usable with a logged in user, or whether we require to set the flag in settings PHP, which allows you to get access to the page.
So at least for Drupal 7, I think even with the 6 to 7 update, we tried to preserve the session and the person running the update if we could, and not require update-free access. So it would be good if we kept that, because it is a pain to go and edit update-free access and set it back every time.
One big difference, though, between 6, 7, and 8 is that in 8 you have so much flexibility, so much more flexibility, that it's really hard to estimate what will go on if you start a session or authenticate.
What I just posted on the issue was whether it's worth looking at running the authentication in a try catch and just see any exceptions. And then if we don't, so you need to set update-free access. But that doesn't account for like uncatchable fatal errors, which you could still get if there's a wrong type being passed to something because it's coming from the database and then it's being passed in somewhere else. So it wouldn't do everything that it possibly could.
So we would try to build to boot up the container, and if that fails,
when we say try update-free access, and then update-free access is set, then we don't bother trying to do that because we don't need to. But I mean, it's getting horrible, but then it would be horrible to make people edit update-free access every single time they update as well. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure about hosting environments. Do they allow to configure your settings PHP at all?
Not Acquia.
Yeah. But then does the Acquia probably doesn't let you run update.php yourself either, does it?
I don't know, but I would have thought it did.
Yeah, at least I think you can go to update.php because the Drush version is also broken.
Okay, so you can't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but what means, I mean, there might be cases where you simply cannot bootstrap anymore. I mean, it's so simple that this happens. I mean, some random event subscriber in contrib breaks, boom, you can't run update.php.
Yep.
Yeah. But that actually makes me wonder, why did we even make the switch to route plus controller? I just pasted a link in the chat in Drupal Contribute. So it's issue 2250119 that did the conversion. And I wonder, do we want to go back on the reasoning that we had there and indeed make it a separate controller? Or...
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily the fact that we have a controller and we use the routing system. It's
the fact that the entire container was bootstrapped and so on. So you can do all sorts of crazy things. So, yeah, but I'm just wondering, is it maybe at this point easier to not have to deal with all of that and just go back to have a separate PHP script, literally?
I mean, it would certainly be easier, but the problem with authentication would be still there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but that problem with authentication existed in Drupal 7, right?
Not as much, because we didn't have authentication providers in the same way that we do now. I mean, we do kind of have it, like say OpenID might make a schema change, and then that might break things, but I think it's going to be more widespread.
Yeah, but then those people are just going to have to use update-free access as they did before.
Yes, if we can fix that, but we're still going to have to make it so that you can use update-free access and we don't just fatal all over the place.
But it would have fataled in Drupal 7.
No, it wouldn't, because in Drupal 7 you have to make a session, and then update.php only checks the session. Drupal 8 is not quite the same as that, is it? Like the only Drupal 7's update.php, the only dependency it has is on the session table itself. It doesn't. None of the authentication code matters, because what they do is they log you in, and then you're using cookie authentication. Whereas Drupal 8, we allow other authentication providers to use and use other stuff. So I think there's more potential.
Well, can we limit? Can we say, if you want to run update.php without changing your settings PHP, you need to use cookie authentication?
Or
I mean,
I think Wim and I are about to suggest the same thing. Or we just run with a different container which has only cookie authentication.
I had an even different suggestion that is maybe crazier. What if we make update.php a separate thing again, where the authentication is done by only depending on the key value store and us loading a certain, like, you have to specify a query string parameter that is a non-guessable, dynamically generated thing. And so to do updates, you go to somewhere in Drupal 8, for example, the status report where the updates page, the updates are listed. There you'll have a dynamically generated URL that allows you to actually execute that front controller and otherwise not access it.
well, so in other words, you would need to first go figure out the future URL you will go to, and then deploy your code.
No, just
You
the
can't.
the problem was authentication, right? So if we solve that problem by making authentication super simple and have authentication happen in advance, store a value somewhere that is the only thing that updated.php has to check, then
Okay.
that's what we have for authentication. And I know it's very hacky and out of the box, but I figured that's at least suggested. But so Alex suggested a different container that only has cookie authentication. Maybe that's more sane.
So you're saying any user with like the run, whatever it is, there's a run update permission. That user with that permission, we'd always make sure that they have something setting key value as well.
No, they go to this page and they get a link, and this link is able, like with it using the shared secret that's stored in settings PHP, is able to determine whether or not it's a valid link, much like the one-time update link.
Well, you'd have to do that before deployment of the code. So if you forget and you deploy code, you can't go to the page to get a link because it's...
That is definitely the same as Drupal 7, because if you'd forgotten to log in before you did the deployment of the code, and the deployment of the code broke logins until the update.php had run, you would still in that situation.
There's a difference between being logged in and going to the special page to copy and paste the link, remember where you put it, and then...
It's one extra step. So I mean, it's kind of really similar to rebuild PHP, right?
Yes.
Where you also have the script, which gets you the key, and then you can go to rebuild PHP. So I was wondering whether...
Yeah, that's basically what I was suggesting too.
Yeah.
I think it's rebuild PHP is that's like a developer tool. Like end users who set up their blog should not have to go to rebuild.php unless they're like, unless they've got a really dodgy, buggy contrib module. But just like you update because of security release, that you shouldn't be going there. Like you shouldn't have to do that in normal operation.
Yeah, but an update that's a security release that breaks like login.
It's really common.
Is it?
Well, it breaks your site at least, like. I'm sure we've done security releases that have, for example, logged everyone out before. Like OpenID sessions or something. I can't remember a specific one, but it must be at least one where the whole point of the update was that it invalidated all the current sessions. Well, maybe that would happen during the update. It wouldn't matter. But do we not think that the front controller with just a try-catch around authentication is enough?
Well, as Daniel was saying, the problem is that anything can happen because of what people can do to the container, right?
Oh, see, yeah, of course, yeah.
Well,
but just having the container is not...
Well, bootstrapping the container shouldn't be that much of a problem. We should not like run the HTTP kernel thing.
Yeah, I think...
But rather just ask whatever session handler manager thingy, and then get that. Hi, Jess. And then, I mean, That's just this one service which is invoked. I mean, that feels more safe, but the question is like, what happens if you store your session data in whatever other store? Is that bootstrappable, or is that fine to run at that early point?
And the other thing we can say is that if you're dealing with sessions, then you have to do update.php safe updates and handle things yourself. And I don't think that's completely unreasonable just for authentication providers. I do think we should try and avoid running like the request response events and the rest of that. But I'm not sure it's such a bad restriction for authentication providers.
Yeah, if we can limit the surface to just having to worry about authentication providers rather than the rest of everything, I think that would be a good thing.
It doesn't mean you can't make changes, it just means you have to make changes that don't make errors after they've been made until they're updated as well. Which is not so bad, you know.
Yeah.
So wait, so how does like other authentication providers work, not cookie based? I mean, does it even work properly in the browser?
Well, basic auth will work now.
Yes, it would, but you would need a contrib module. Yeah, it would.
So I guess that's the thing we should do, is we should write a test which has like swaps out for basic auth and tries to run update PHP using that. So I don't know if I think, did we get build consensus around like Catch's last comment on the issue saying that we should wrap the authenticate in a try catch and also probably move update PHP to its own separate front controller so that we don't fire all the routing events? Is that where we're at with this issue?
I think so. And then like if you have, so should we do the full update process in the dedicated front controller, or should we do the splitting into early, normal, and whatever?
I kind of like the idea of doing the splitting because I don't think we want to. If you change the front controller and just have these low-level updates and then immediately redirect, then you don't need to try to render anything at all on that page. So just rather than having to have no request events and then but still render a full page, we could, by doing the redirect, we can just do all of that stuff. So it seems like it would be simpler to have the controller and the root and redirect from one to the other, because then the root can do what it does now, which is actually really simple, unless you get one of these horrible updates to deal with.
Yeah, but what happens if we've got a lot of these horrible little updates that take a long time and need to be batched?
I mean, I think that at that point, are you talking about like a path alias update or something like that?
Yeah, that.
Something that would take a long time. I don't know, but also breaks authentication.
Well, but I mean, batch requires a lot of Drupal.
Yeah.
So if you have an update to run, which is going to break Batch API, then you can't use Batch API to run it. We just cannot do that. It's just there's no way. There's no way.
Well, then you should write your code in a way that it's BC compatible.
Yeah, you have.
I mean, it's not impossible, right? You
Yeah.
you either store the new data in a new column and check like whether the new column is there or not.
Yeah.
Something.
And then you provide like a separate migration process script to run on sites like out of band or whatever if you have to do that.
Using migrate even.
Or whatever. It's just a script, who knows?
Well, that's tricky because in order to run migrate, you need to work in Drupal.
I mean, you could probably, if you've got you can do a queue or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that, potentially. But I mean, that's dodgy because you're going to have half your data correct and half your data not. But if your code is backwards compatible, or you can do one of those things where it self-heals stuff when it sees it, and otherwise it does it in a queue.
So the other thing then to kind of like ponder. So if we're going to have this like 2-tier update path, what belongs in like the super low level tier, and what belongs in the regular cattle class tier?
Which updates belong where, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think if your update runs on the root, then it belongs there, and if it's not going to run there and it breaks the root, then it belongs in the
super low level. So only breaking stuff belongs there.
Yes, and then if you're paranoid, you can put stuff in hookup upgrade.
Because
Can we give them names that are more different than that? Please. The update thing has been a nightmare.
I really like the idea of hook update early.
Yes.
Ah, yes. That is explicit.
Yeah.
I like that.
Even it doesn't say what it's used for. It shouldn't repair. Hook update repair something.
No, hook update early is good.
Yeah, because hook update repair sounds like what after, but I like that suggestion, Daniel. So, so the other question, so you're leaning toward these two separate operations having to be two separate routes that site builders visit.
So how it would work? It would work that the user visits d8/update PHP, and then it like does the hook update early functions, like fixes Drupal, and then it redirects to the full page with the usual page as we have now.
So that makes sense. Okay.
Can I think it would be better if it redirected to the same page, but somehow knew that it was going to do the full version, because otherwise we're going to have problems around like people will just visit the second one first.
Well, but then you could just have a random query parameter dealing with that.
Or something. We need to prevent like if there are early updates.
Right.
Then they have to be run before the other ones.
If you try to go to installer query parameter bang bang bang, that's your problem. Similarly, I think for this.
But we were saying having it on two different routes. So like update.php would do the early ones and then go to some other route. Like I don't know what it would say. But the other problem is dependencies. So we've got early updates, and then we've got late updates, and then another module adds early updates, but it assumes that the late updates from the other module have run, or something like that.
Well, you can't.
It shouldn't.
Yeah, the systems that are updated in the early updates should only ever be dependencies of the systems that are updated in the late updates.
So the same module does an early update and does a late update, and then it adds another early update later on.
Well, the other early update
No, it's
so this module has early update 8001, and then it has late update 8001, and then it adds early update 8002, and it runs on a site which hasn't run anything. Early updates will run before the late updates, so that's really messed up.
Well, but why? Okay, but why did you broke your things in a way that it needed 2 times an update?
Because Drupal developers will do that. I point to the Twitter module, which allegedly had 5 different versions of the field before it finally settled into how it was going to do something.
So you're saying they're updating the same data in the early and the late updates?
Well, yeah, anything's possible, right?
Well, the way I see it, if it's 2 different data sets and you have the early updates, then the whole point of the early updates is to get the system in a consistent state so it can run the late updates and nothing else. So if you're using it correctly, then all of the early updates should run, and then your system and your code base will be in the right spot to run update.php and run the late updates. And late updates should always depend on the most... here we go. Should always depend on your own module being in a consistent state. That's the whole point that we have these 2 APIs. So if for some reason you have this weird interdependency between your 3 updates, then the hook update 8001 would need to be rewritten
to work with both.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. I just think we need to tease that out and say that, because it's like.
I mean, that's not that far off. We've done that in Drupal 7 as well, like changing the interior, retaining the update function, but changing its interior in order to cope with future things. So.
I also told people never to do that because we did it once in Drupal 7. But I think for cases like this, we need to.
Well, the solution would be to blank the late update 001, just remove it, and then write a late update 8002 that was able to work with either instances.
So that can work, but then you have the issue that you have a site that's already run 8001.
Yeah.
And that worked, and then you try to run 8002, and that's going to behave as if 8001 didn't run, and it's going to try to do the same thing which it's already done. But what you can do then is, instead of blanking 8001, you set something in key value that says it's run, and then you know whether the 8001 that run was the empty one or the populated one, and 8002 has to check it.
Yeah.
So it's all possible, but it's just it
requires specific thought and.
Yeah, we used those tricks in some Drupal 7 updates.
Yeah, but we never documented any of those tricks anywhere. They're just in pieces.
The brains of the people talking on the phone right now.
Yeah, and 1 or 2 others who mostly left coded them.
Run away shrieking, never again.
So I have kind of a high-level question that I think is germane here. At Prague, when we had no idea how any of this would pan out, we made a decision to continue using update.php for patch and minor releases, and to use migrate for major releases. And we haven't really talked about at all the fact that with the extra effort of a migration, we do have a safety out valve for nasty upgrade problems, where once migrate works, and once there are 8 source and destination plugins, people can migrate stuff from an 8 site to an 8 site as well to get around some of these problems. So how many of these theoretical update ordering problems that we're constructing now could be a situation where it might just be advisable for the site owner to do a migration instead?
So potentially most of them, but we would need every contrib and also custom module to have Drupal 8 sources and destinations which are up to date. Because if you want to migrate your whole site, every single thing that's storing anything needs to account for that. So I think it's going to be a while before we're at a point where we can say that that's what you do.
I'm personally a little bit worried about updates which need to be executed in order when you had a security release, because I mean migrations aren't necessarily fast, and you want to get I mean, just imagine a site with 100,000 nodes, 500,000 users, 2 million comments. I mean, that's not migrated in a day.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons that we didn't talk about throwing out update PHP entirely, even though I think it would bring us joy to set it on fire and remove it from core. But I think scenarios like that are why we still have to have it. But the question is, like, is there, what is the vanishingly small Venn diagram in a foam of circles of sites that have a combination of complicated updates coming from different sources that include this kind of an update that happens quickly and so forth. Like, that part of the reason for doing the security releases, doing the security release and then the bug fix release 2 weeks later, is also so that people don't have to run a bunch of shitty updates with the security updates that need to apply right away. So
with Migrate, there was one, I think in that actual discussion where we talked about this, there was another like halfway idea where we'd have 8 to date updates that are more or less insert into select from when you know that there's no change. So it would be basically an 8 source and destination where it knows that it's exactly the same and there's been no changes, and that would be really quick. And then you would only have to do a real migration for things that have changed. So that would slightly help the speed issue, because it would almost be like dump and restore, but not quite. I mean, I still have to run through Josh and everything, but
I don't know. It feels incredibly expensive for me to tell people that they're going to run migrations for 8 to 8 updates.
right. So I wasn't suggesting that we do away with update.php. I was suggesting that in situations where things are likely to break their data, in those situations we say, in this situation we recommend a migrate instead, once we have the API, obviously.
I mean, we should try to get to the point where 8 to 8 migrations are viable, and I think especially for like big site re-architecture and stuff, it would be really handy.
Yeah, I agree with that, but not as part of like fixing like something in sessions or something. Yeah. Because it's likely to be a security thing that requires this low-level update.
But just this one low-level update isn't the one that we're concerned about, right? It's this one low-level update combined with these 20 other updates and all of these other updates that people have to run at the same time.
So there's another thing that so I'll try and get a proper sentence together for this. The idea of having a separate install, not of WordPress, that was mentioned, but of Drupal that runs the updates on the other side, is possibly interesting. So you wouldn't migrate, but you would spin up a multi-site, and then you'd use that, and then you shut it down again, and that updates the other site's database for you. Then you've got access to everything, but then you'd still have to run 2 code bases. No, you wouldn't. You'd run the new code base to install the new site, and then you run updates on the old site, and then that would be done. But that's not a small thing.
Yeah, if you then require to have all the modules similar and all the settings similar to the other sites, so you know what to run in the first place.
Yeah, it'd have to be like a multi-site install. But if you already had a multi-site install, then you'd be doubling the number of sites and things. So I don't think that's viable.
All right. Sorry for the diversion.
So it's, I've been talking to Sasha on IRC, and it sounds like he wants to spend some time thinking and write some stuff down before he talks about the the update stuff. So potentially we should just probably try and talk about it ourselves now and wait for Sasha's stuff later, because it sounds like he doesn't feel ready. So should we talk about automatic entity updates are not safe to run on update PHP by default? Pasted the issue into IRC and contribute. So this issue is about what happens when we make a change to an entity type that requires a data migration if there is data already. So this can be anything from changing the underlying data type from something like a float to a double, which is the example that brought this on, or it could be removing a field from an entity type.
Or even the case that we already committed of adding indexes to the schema for the node and user tables now.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, but those aren't destructive versions of an automatic entity update.
But those are cases that should be discussed also, as per yesterday, as part of this.
Yeah, sure. So the current feeling from at least Catch and Platch, myself, is that automatic entity updates running as part of update.php is highly problematic because it doesn't play well with the update dependency system. It doesn't give the hook update n writer the chance to perform a data migration as part of converting the field. And currently, it also has the feature of looking like it succeeds when it doesn't.
So those things together are separate bugs, though. Like the third thing is a separate bug, the second thing is a separate bug.
Fair enough, but like the solution is holistic. Like if we're going to decide to not run them, then like, it becomes the solution to the other one, right?
Not sure about that, actually, because even if we don't run them, we want the update not to be run when we have a condition that would break it. So basically, we need both fixes anyway.
Fair enough.
I think we have a fix for the latter. I think Jay Headstrong posted a fix for the latter. For actually the original issue that should be working. So we just need to decide whether we want to remove running automatic updates from update.php.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that we still need the functionality provided by let me find the issue. By improve the X of manually applying entity storage definition updates, because we still have some updates that for which running an individual update is not enough, and so even by invoking them manually from update function, we wouldn't be able to address all the use cases. So basically, in that case, we would need to completely replace the entity update with a manual version. And for that we need the other issue. But yeah, that can be definitely a separate issue. But that's what I was discussing yesterday with Birdie.
So I had a quick chat with Alex earlier about the improving DX issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try and summarize it. So you could have a situation where two different modules or the same table to have two different indexes, and both of those would then need hook update in that adds the index, but we'd want to use the auto update to do it. We wouldn't want to do manual schema manipulation. But if those two code bases get updated at the same time, whichever update runs first would apply both updates. So instead of that, what I thought about was we have the current schema in state. So to resolve that issue, we could get the current schema from the state, apply the change that the module is doing in the code base to that schema, so it's the current schema plus only the change that they have, and then
we don't have the schema in the state. We have the definitions.
I think that's.
Is that not the same thing?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the definitions as the thing that the schema gets generated
Right.
from.
Yeah.
So
Which doesn't matter.
Just wanting to be sure it didn't somehow break your line of thinking.
No. Sorry, let's say definitions instead of schema because then it's clearer. So you alter the field definitions, which has an effect on the schema. But we have the definitions in state, and then you apply only the alter for specific changing that you're making to that, and then you have that plus the one change that you've got. And then your hook update end says, here's the old one, here it is with my modification, resolve these, and then you send it off and it does it. And then the other module that's got the other change, when it gets out of state, it's been updated from the hook update that's just run, so the state is accurate again. And then it makes its own change to that, and then it resolves it. And if you get conflicts, then we'll get an exception, and that's okay, because then you have to deal with update dependencies or the modules are incompatible. But it would allow us to use the schema agnostic and database agnostic updates without running into issues where one module is triggering updates for lots and lots of ones at the same time. That's as far as we've got.
What I like about this is that it means that all updates are being run as part of hook update N, and so we get back the predictability that we had in Drupal 7, meaning that if we do get issues where two different modules have dependencies on each other's updates, then they can resolve them using update dependencies. Whereas at the moment, they wouldn't know about it because the automatic entity updater would be hiding it, and potentially just weird stuff can happen where everything goes out of order. Like one update, one module can assume that it hasn't run, but the other module has done something early and stuff like that. The solution that we put in where we move the entity updates from the start of the process to the end of the process has left me feeling unsettled.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, one thing that we were discussing yesterday with earlier is that even running individual automatic updates keeps some unpredictability around, because let's say you perform a field addition in 8001, and then you perform an update, you change, I don't know, you add the index in 8002. Depending on whether you're updating from 8000 or 8001, when you reach 8002, you may have a different behavior.
Yeah, exactly, and this is why Catch's solution of getting like the last definitions from state and then applying the particular updates that you want to for that update. You know what you've done in your code it helps make it back to a closer approximation to what we had in Drupal 7 with the atomic updates, but we still keep the nice DB, the database agnostic stuff that we've got with Drupal 8.
But if you have to, the state thing breaks down though, because state doesn't have a sequence of all the definitions. It just has the original one from the site. But the site is still going to go through all of the different schema contortions. Like if you want to have each of the entity updates run in a separate update hook, then the database is still going to need to go through all of the sequential changes in a row from all of those different update hooks. So they still are not going to need to be aware of the previous state of the database, and it's like none of the automatic update API is there anymore.
So I still think it would work. So you have 5 different entity updates, right? So before any updates run, the state matches code before you updated your code base, and then the first one runs, and it takes the current state of the field definitions, which matches the database, and it applies the one change that it has, and it runs the update on it, and then that gets written. The result of that gets written back to state, with the change applied. So it then matches this, what it should be after that update as one, and nothing else. And then the next one gets the state, and that's been updated, and it applies that. So you do have this sequential thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But isn't that the same as if we have the schema number? I mean, just that we kind of automatically try to find out the schema. What would be so worse in kind of going back to a more sophisticated sequential update sequence? So one of the biggest problems you have in Drupal 7 if you're writing schema updates and you have this hook schema is that you have to copy your original initial schema to your first update hook so that you can exactly get this initial state data because you cannot rely on hook schema because that has already run. But what would happen if hook schema was kind of a class, like I'm thinking in Drupal 7 terms here, and then you would just kind of have functions that are modifying the schema over time. Then you have all this data explicitly clear, and then in each hook update n you can just say schema apply update whatever, and then you have all the initial schema and the old schema just as a sequence of mutation within a class. Wouldn't that be kind of much more explicit than relying on some automatic way that, as we've seen, makes a lot of trouble when dealing with Contrap?
So that would work nicely if everything was in hook schema, but the problem is we would also have to do the same kind of version thing for our hooks, which are altering entity definitions.
Yep, that's the problem. We are not dealing with schema at all at higher level.
So you would have to write like if you changed an entity and you changed something on it within a schema altering hook, you would have kind of need to have a version for each schema level for that modification to still work.
Well, actually, ideally, we should be able to translate every change to a definition into a change to the schema. The fact that we're directly manipulating the schema is just because we weren't able to completely abstract the schema concept from the definition. Actually, fields are still providing their own native schema, let's call it. That is, the columns they need to be stored, and that's a flaw in the API, something that we couldn't fix in time. But actually, ideally, only the typed data definition should be enough to completely define the schema. The problem is that that's the theory and not in practice, because then you still need optimization like indexes and so on, and that's a concept that it's simply not there in field definitions. So the problem here, I think the root problem is that we are trying to I don't know how to say it, to basically mix two different systems, actually, in the sense that, for example, head-to-head is trying to use entity updates to deal with problems that the system was not designed to cope with, because it wasn't focusing on changing incremental changes of schema, but it was focused on reflecting changes to definitions. And there are these small gaps in the two concepts that are probably the root cause of all the troubles here. Okay, this was tough.
The bells, the bells.
Yeah, sorry, it's the
call is over, right? Like the call is making it very. There was, Platch got the church to ring the bells. Oh, it did stop. Wow.
Okay.
I don't hope that. I hope we don't need a god in order to fix Drupal 8.
So I think what we have to do is to work on the suggested solution from Catch, which is applying updates in an atomic way via hook update. Because that way, if there's any data migration, then it can be done by the hook update. If it's as simple as just creating an index, it still gets it should have a nice, easy way of applying the schema change using the auto updater, but only doing the granular thing that it needs to do. And then we move on.
So there's one thing with the data migrations that I'm not sure whether to fix, but it does worry me a bit. So with the auto updater, regardless of what storage is used, that's going to work. But as soon as you start doing data migrations, you're going to be dealing with raw SQL again. Do we need to at least open an issue to see if there's a way that we can abstract that out?
Well, not necessarily. So to take the example that kind of kicked off this discussion, which was like the possibility of moving like the currently float item uses the float type, which our database abstraction layer converts to a 4-byte float for Postgres and MySQL, but by default all floats are 8-byte floats in SQLite. So it resulted in an SQLite test failure, and I was like, okay, there's some different ways of fixing that. And then I tried the update scenario, and it kind of failed in this interesting way of not reporting anything but looking successful. But actually, like in SQL terms, altering that column from a float to a double would be successful. So if we tried to run the alter, it would work. And the only reason that we prevent it is because the column has existing data, but actually the operation to do the change is okay. So there should, for me, like there should at least be a way to tell the entity schema update to attempt to do the migration. Because if we know, like in this instance, that it's safe, then it means that we get like the storage agnostic stuff. It should just work.
So I like that. So we would say in updates, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then in the UI, we probably still stop it because the UI can't know what's safe. Well,
the UI can't do this.
Yeah.
The UI couldn't actually make that change. Yeah, if we allow that type of change in the UI, for wherever we would allow it in the UI, if there was a way of swapping out this type of storage bit in the UI, then it would already be safe. So, because we've added it to the UI, we wouldn't be adding something to the UI that just breaks your data, right? That would be a failure of the UI. So, yeah.
That sounds like.
No, that was a bit tautological.
Yeah, but we intentionally we don't allow someone to change a decimal field to a float field without in the UI. We just don't allow someone to do that, right? And the reason we don't allow someone to do that is because it's data breaking. We can't guarantee that your data's going to.
And so what Catch was saying was we still need to retain that restriction in the UI.
I agree.
I mean, for example, you could change a 64 varchar to a 256 varchar, and that would be fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Well, let's not talk about that. But I like the idea that we say don't check if there's data and you can do that manually, and then we talk about whether it ever gets opened up.
Yeah.
Another point.
Yeah, exactly. And then if there's more complicated issues, that if there are destructive technical changes that can't be applied that way, then it's up to the module to do the work. I mean, just as it was before. And yes, it's painful, but we can't fix that.
So is there anything from the last beta blocker before the link one where we added the functionality for this to happen automatically? Is there any of that API that we can retain and still use?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question, but we are actually retaining everything. We're just avoiding to trigger updates automatically, but all the system is still in place. If you have a look, for instance, to the content translation module update manager, it will manually trigger updates, but it will just rely on the system to figure out the correct schema and create it. So, and that's actually the real use case that was meant to be supported by this API. Not really the fact that it ended up in the update UI. It's just accidental. It's just that we needed a UI. I initially was proposing a separate UI, and then it felt then, since it was a similar operation with respect to database updates, it ended in the update UI, but they are actually different things, and that was being able to apply those changes from the UI was certainly not the main use case we had in mind, actually.
So you're okay, Platch, with still having them part of that same UI and it just being that hook update and wraps the calls to the updates?
Yeah, totally. Actually, the changes we are proposing are in the issue are probably making things easier for users, because we were talking about automatically applying additive updates during the module installation. At the moment, if you install a module that adds a field, you need to run updates PHP to get the field schema created. This way, you wouldn't have to. And the idea of the improve DX blah 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 issue was to provide an API for methods to use in hook install to avoid forcing the user to manually run the updates from the UI.
Cool.
So yes, I think it's more or less, if we do everything we sum up in the issue summary, we will end up with an UX improvement and possibly a perceived DX regression, but actually things will become more sane in the end. So when
a DX regression, because you have to think about things that you should be thinking about anyway.
Yes, exactly.
But it seemed like you didn't need to.
Yeah, the current message is entity updates are magic and are figuring everything out for you, and that's not the case. They weren't designed that way. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm +1 on the current solution.
So I think we just need to wait. I'll try and sum up what we've said here on the call, on a comment on the issue, and also I'll try and we'll just wait for Sasha's feedback, and hopefully my summary will help lead into the conclusion that what we're saying is correct.
It would also be good if the issue summary, and this doesn't need to be you, Alex, but it would be good if the issue summary's problem motivation, in addition to giving a specific example of how to reproduce the bug, included other examples of the kinds of changes and the big picture of what the actual problem is. Because, like, so we have this one bug, right? We can fix that one bug that doesn't actually display the underlying conceptual problem that needs to be solved here. And so the proposed resolution looks crazy when you read those 6 steps.
Yeah, but those 6 steps are what caused the discussion to realize the scale of the problem. And so issue summary takes time to get right.
Right, I'm just saying, could use an update.
Yeah.
Nat, can you sum up, post a comment summing up your proposal, just to be sure I got it right?
Yeah, I'll start typing it now.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll be going for an hour. We've reached the end of the meeting as far as I can
The
see.
church bells ended the meeting.
The church bells. Well, they did. We've been live all the time. So Fabian, do you have anything, as you join the call later? Do you have anything that you would like to add that you've been working on that you need to discuss? Because I think we've talked about everything else. Fabian, did I not say the name right? Fabian X. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, couldn't.
It's okay. Do you have anything that you'd like to discuss on the call? Because we missed you out from the updates because you weren't on the call at that point.
Not really. Just service container still needs reviews.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I can give an update if no one has already, which I don't know. So I just talk about it. The performance profiling scenarios, one has taken a nice round to the better, where we now have some automated Casper scripts to automatically treat that together with my XHProf kit. So we can kind of rely on that. We could even automatically update the runs to my servers in that. I've even started playing around to see if I could even automate that on Travis CI or something like that, or even Drupal CI. So there's lots of new possibilities now that Alex Ward has written those Casper scripts, and I've tried them out locally, and that works well. I think we are in a way much better shape than before there. So I totally agree with Alex's comment there that we should have 2 to 4 people just trying out that scenarios with the Casper scripts and see what kind of data they get, post in the spreadsheets or upload the XHProf runs, and then we can take a look at that. So that's good. Service containers in really good shape. From my point of view, it's kind of ready, but it needs reviews, and whatever feedback comes, I will address. And then lastly, on the performance overall front, I think we've made some great steps. Daniel especially has done many little micro steps, but we can just hope that all those micro steps will totally sum up to larger savings in the end. Yeah, that's it for me.
Excellent.
Talking about service container, I would really like Lorenz to review the issue, but he seems to be not motivated to look at it.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. Who is a good person to review that? I know I'm not. I'm reviewing it for nitpicks right now, but yeah, you need a different set of knowledge to be able to really review it.
The only thing I'm worried about is the dependency onto the cache system for Bootstrap, because I mean, I mentioned that somewhere. Just imagine you have to change the cache tables.
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of have the try catch again in for not fartling. I mean, we don't rely on a container. We are building one on the fly anyway. So probably within the update PHP front controller, all that we need to do is to say allow dumping equals 0, and then we should, or even allow loading equals 0, so we never load a cached container or a dump container in that, or we use a different hash in there. So only if it's valid for that update thing. So there's lots of possibilities to get around that besides the catch-all.
Okay, well, the catch-all just hides the problem, right?
No, yeah. I mean, the point is we don't rely and never have on loading a compiled container. We always have the container builder to run that.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And even and with this container, that's not even true. We will be running with the right container. We just won't be loading it from the database or somewhere. So the loading step is entirely optional.
I see. So for updates PHP, we could try to get the container and otherwise rebuild it, not dump it, but rather just build it, and then try to authenticate. And if it's still not working, we could print out the message to head your settings PHP.
Yes, something like that. But that shouldn't be a problem. As we said, we cannot rely on there being a cache, so it shouldn't be a condition for that. And probably the simplest, as I said, is use a different cache key by overriding. I don't know if you have an update kernel, but that would be easy to add. Like we have an installer kernel, and then override the cache key or put a setting in globally to override the cache key, deploy identifier that we already have, and put allow dumping to the false, and then never something will be dumped, and so never something will be trying to be loaded, and then it should not be a problem.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the rebuilding step, because I mean we ask config and whatnot during our service providers.
Okay, so that's probably a good point. We should probably do that anyway, because that's if you take a look at the change records, getting a container definition at the moment is a little bit dancey. So maybe we just have like a get cached container definition function. The update kernel could override that, just return false always, and we never have an exception from trying to load from the database. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I think like Krell or Larry would be a good person as well. I think, but I'm not sure like how happy he is about it.
I said I'd try and review it yesterday, but I didn't. I'm not sure how today, but I'll try and have a look as soon as I'm able to get some solid time with it.
Daniel, what did you mean about Krell potentially being not happy about this? The fact that we are building our own container instead of using symphonies, or is there something?
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily just the fact that we use our own containers, rather the fact that we need to run something which is more dynamic, or well, it's basically down to that it's less standardized and
okay. We got less of the island basically.
Yeah, but which island? No, which sea? I mean, is it the lava sea? I don't know.
Well, I would say that this is a good candidate for contributing upstream in the end, right? So maybe we are just leading the way and providing an improved container, and Symfony will happily adopt it. I don't know what has been done in that area already, but like if it's better in every single aspect, then I don't see why they would categorically refuse to at least consider it. So it's just that we need to be able to move forward now and not wait on the entire process there.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think that container would be really useful is for every other CMS.
Yep.
Because
anything that is very flexible.
Yeah, right. Everything which cannot rely on a shell environment.
Yeah.
Or which allows you to install something via the UI.
Yes. Yeah, anything that is not entirely developer only, as in a framework and run scripts to build it. Yep. Yep. Cool.
thanks everyone for joining today. I think it's a really, really good call, and I think we've got solutions on issues which we didn't have before the call. So let's go forth and make awesome.
The benediction to go with the church bells we just heard. Go forth and make awesome.
Nice one.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Guys.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.